The craftsman, the artist. Do we remember them or just their legacy, their creations? Some die in poverty and relative obscurity. They will never see just how celebrated their art was in later years. Ironically, their art sells now for hundreds of thousands of dollars. It is the collectors and dealers who benefit from the skill, imagination, and toil. The individual has been forgotten, but sometimes their name becomes synonymous with the description of an art form. The name Ditchburn has always been associated with boats. Some of the finest pleasure craft to glide the waters of Ontario and the world. So why did this boat builder for the rich and famous die penniless, buried in a pauper's grave, far from his beloved waters? There are people whose contribution to the world has been ignored, sometimes because they were a stepping stone to a greater innovation, or because history has just chosen to remember others. If we are going to subscribe to a form of great man history and look at specific people's impact, we should do more than just remember a few key facts. We should delve deeper. Ditchburn Pleasure Boat Company operated from 1871 until approximately the 1930s, building wooden rowboats and canoes early in its history, and later gasoline-powered launches. Ditchburn is particularly known for producing high-quality mahogany launches, which have become highly prized by collectors. The Ditchburn family had boat building in their blood. A Ditchburn earned his place in marine history. William Ditchburn was the naval advisor to Queen Elizabeth I. The Ditchburn boat building tradition carried on in England for centuries, with a Ditchburn boatyard in Blackwall. The Ditchburn boatyards produced the schooner yacht Volna, built for the Grand Duke Constantine of Russia in 1818. In 1869, 4 Ditchburn descendants, the brothers William, Henry, John, and Arthur, emigrated to Canada, settling in the village of Roseau on the frontier of Ontario. When the resort industry in Muskoka began to flourish, the Ditchburn brothers turned to their family tradition of boat building. They began to construct rowboats from the upper story of William's house, close to Pratt's Hotel in Roseau. By 1874, the Ditchburns had a fleet of 24 rowboats that were rented out to visitors. After close to 20 years of building small craft in Roseau, and with Henry in charge, they moved operations to Gravenhurst in 1890. In 1904, the enterprise was run by Henry's nephew, Herb Ditchburn, who partnered with master builder Tom Gravett to reorganize the firm as the H. Ditchburn Boat Manufacturing Company. The firm built many custom-built gasoline launches and some stock models, mostly consisting of rear cockpit configuration with engine forward. As the years went on and internal combustion engine technology improved, the mainstay of Ditchburn's works was focused on launches, yachts, and speedboats. Herb Ditchburn and Thomas Grivet stepped up Ditchburn production, creating custom launches for the wealthy families of Muskoka. As many of the boats were custom built for discerning clients, the Ditchburns invited buyers to the shop. At any time, the buyers could personally view the construction of their boat, witnessing the incredible workmanship that went into every boat that they constructed. In August of 1915, the Ditchburn plant at the Gravenhurst Wharf was destroyed by fire. It then became a brick plant that was built in 1916 and still stands today. Abandoned and decrepit from the outside, it gives no illusion to the magnificent boats that were once built there. One of the first boats to be built at the new plant was the Cowandag II, a 73-foot yacht built for John Eaton. Constructed entirely of mahogany, the Cowandag II was the first large ship built by Ditchburn. In the late 1920s, Ditchburn began selling forward cockpit designs. His was the largest operation on Lake Muskoka, employing 30 men in 1921, expanding to 60 by 1923. Herbert built the new plant in Orillia, where these large boats could be constructed and delivered to virtually anywhere in the world due to the proximity of the Trent Severn waterway. Ditchburn's reputation for quality craftsmanship grew, opening its market to the United States, where eventually half the company's production was shipped. Enormous cruisers of fascinating luxury were produced at the Orillia plant, and many of the nation's most affluent families had a Ditchburn cruiser as a mark of status. High standards of workmanship were always demanded by Herb, and thus quality, not quantity, was always the primary mandate of Ditchburn boats. The company was impacted by the Great Depression, experiencing its first layoff in July 1930. Slow orders were compounded by the opening of Grivet's boats in 1931, dividing a smaller market between two competitors. That year, 2/3 of the Gravenhurst plant had been laid off as orders declined. The company succumbed to the Great Depression, folding in April 1932. It reorganized and reopened in 1933 in a smaller plant. The company survived for a few years, but failed again in 1936 and was again reorganized. The company failed for a third and final time in 1938. Herb Ditchburn went to work with competitor Gar Wood. Garfield Wood was already a famous powerboat racer. Wood set a new water speed record of 74.8 miles per hour in 1920 on the Detroit River using a new boat called Miss America. In the following 12 years, Wood built 9 more Miss Americas. But his tenancy at Garwood Boats would not be long. You see, Herb Ditchburn had built a 45-foot ketch-rigged sailboat called the Portia for the Senator William Fraser in 1929. Senator Fraser, born in Trenton, Ontario, had gone on to represent the area politically through the 1920s and 30s and was instrumental in bringing the RCAF base to Trenton. With the onset of World War II, the British required fast and seaworthy rescue boats to rescue downed pilots in the English Channel. Senator Fraser remembered Ditchburn and realized he knew someone who could build them. Herb responded and immediately moved to Trenton in 1940 to help out with the war effort. Garwood was also a director. Having already built many vessels for government service, Ditchburn quickly designed an 80-foot vessel very much like a motor torpedo boat that was called hospital ships. Garwood supplied his designed Liberty engines, and 6 ships were built in record time and taken on flatbeds to the East Coast to be shipped overseas. In 1942, a contract for steel tugboats was issued to Central Bridge in Trenton, and Senator Fraser again recruited Herb to join that company. Ditchburn organized the more than 200 men working for the company into an efficient production facility. Sub-assemblies were built separately and then mated at the end, with 2 vessels completed each week. Each vessel had 200 horsepower and weighed 74 tons. Between 200 and 260 invasion tugs were built between 1942 and 1945. The war ended, and so did any need for an old wooden boat builder. Herb had become a shadow of his former grandeur, and by 1950 he would be dead, penniless and buried in an unmarked grave, in Trenton, Ontario, far from the Muskokas. Fondly remembered by a few who would eventually mark the resting place of the master craftsman, but mostly forgotten as a person, and only remembered as the name of a wooden boat. Sometimes great men are great only within their self-defined skills, and are in fact geniuses. They cannot take the larger view and lack what is so commonly and simply called common sense. However, many could find all the features necessary to achieve great works, wealth, and fame. So mourn the poor geniuses, but not for society's cruelty, nor for their own shortcomings, but for the works they were unable to do as a result. Behind him, he left a legacy that is second to none.